doing meth, day and night.
You start using more and more because it stops working. So you're trying to get that same effect by using more and more and more.
Our brains adapt. Less dopamine, damaged transporters, receptors that withdraw. These are the ways our brains develop tolerance to meth. The same dose doesn't produce the same effects. Of course, what we want is to get high. So we up the dose, and our brains learn to tolerate even more. And the cycle continues.
When everything in my life just came to a screeching halt and I thought that it was the end and I had nothing left, I slammed dope.
I changed methods of use. I went from snorting it to smoking it to shooting it. And I just thought it was normal to do that.
When the regular dose doesn't give us the same rush, we take more. But now when meth reaches the brain, it finds a lot less dopamine. Plus, meth has destroyed transporters. And on the receiving neuron, all that overstimulation we loved has caused receptors to withdraw. So it's just harder to get high. No matter how much meth we use, we can never recapture that first rush.
I would get high maybe just for a minute. and then it was gone.
Tolerance creates big problems. When we increase our dose, we need more money to buy more drugs. This endless search for the high caused by tolerance often gets us into trouble.
At night, I used to look outside the window and I could swear I see people in the trees, and I'd call my friends and go, hey, check it out. There's someone out there, man. There's somebody out there. My friends would tell me, you need to get some sleep.
One of the common side effects of meth use over time is paranoia or unreasonable fear. But I'd like to hear your stories about paranoia. What have you guys experienced?
Looking out of keyholes for hours and hours and hours, convinced that there were people walking by my door, hearing voices coming out of a shower head.
When we blast our brains with meth over time and go without sleep, we may experience what's called meth psychosis. We feel paranoid and afraid as meth stimulates the emotional center of the brain. We see things that aren't real as meth affects the visual cortex. And in the part of the brain that processes sound, we hear things that don't exist.
We have a more primitive part of the brain. It's known as the lower brain, the limbic system. It helps us feel appropriate sense of fear. No organism could live without being afraid when it's appropriate, because sometimes you have to flee from an enemy, you have to stand and fight, and you have to react instinctively. This part of the brain, this lower brain, is especially stimulated by methamphetamine use, by stimulant use. So now what was a natural fear response becomes an unnatural fear response when there's nothing in the environment to really be afraid of.
My paranoia was so terrible that I used to put on a bulletproof vest and a sawed-off shotgun and go outside thinking somebody was out there.
I had paranoia that I thought would never stop. I was afraid to take a shower. I was afraid to do anything. I kept thinking that everyone was in a conspiracy to kill me, regardless of where I was at. Initially, I thought it would stop after I detoxed, but it didn't.
Even after we stop using, some of us have brief flashbacks of paranoia and hallucinations. These symptoms fade as the brain heals, showing just how much meth changed our brains. This is a reminder that addiction is a brain disorder, not a moral failing.
My computer, if it misbehaved in any way, I would smash something. I probably went through a mouse every 4 or 5 weeks. Just unplug it, and you do this, bam, let it go against the wall.
We know that meth use overstimulates our emotional centers, producing powerful feelings of anger and fear, which can lead to irritability and aggression.
Kind of like how children do. That's how most people act under the influence of methamphetamine.
Is this the last one? Is this the last one, Shelly?
When I didn't get what I wanted, I just threw a temper tantrum.
Shelly, did you finish it? Shelly! The more meth we used, the more violent we were. Shelly! It got to the point where violence was an everyday occurrence.
Oh God, my kids had it bad. I'd get a belt to their butts, you know, leave me alone right now, I want to be alone. Don't talk to me, don't call my name. I hit them with the belt for bugging me.
I finally noticed what was going on. The police were at my house because my husband had beat me up. And I was bleeding, and I was on the floor, and there was broken stuff everywhere. And I thought, how did I get here? What's going on in my life?
Police!
When we stop using, take care of our bodies, and apply the tools we've learned in recovery, our brains also heal and aggression quiets down.
I still experience being in a workplace and feeling like my opinion isn't being consulted, angry about the way that the world works. But now I think I have the tools, I have the resources to process them. I didn't have that before.
I reach out to my sponsor, and I also have one other close friend in my meetings that I call, because I need to let them know about the situation so that they can tell me it's okay. Let's evaluate this, and it's really not that big of a deal, and it's okay that you have those feelings.
We often enter treatment not really knowing how aggressive we were during our use. As we get sober, we remember and may feel ashamed. With meth, aggression is a result of changes to the brain. This does not excuse the hurt we cause others, but it can help us understand what was driving the behavior.
I was so angry, and I still had to finish my shift before I could leave. What I really wanted to do was take a drink and then use, because that'll numb it.
Nothing has to happen to trigger me to want to use drugs. It can be as simple as I just wake up with the feeling, or you might make me angry.
I'll just be driving, and I don't know where that thought came from. I wasn't looking at anything or hearing anything.
Craving grows as we use more meth. Here's how it works. As we've seen, meth releases a lot of dopamine, creating intense pleasure. Our brains automatically connect the people, places, and things around us with the pleasure of the high. These become our triggers. Triggers generally fall into two categories: external and internal. External triggers are the people, places, and things that we associate with our use. Internal triggers are intense emotions such as anger, hurt, desire, or fear that cause us to want to use. When we think about or come into contact with these triggers, our brains release dopamine, causing us to crave.
I think in the beginning you associate everything with meth. I mean, you really do. The music, places.
Dollar bills, CD cases, because I used to use CD cases to crush up my drugs on.
Be driving through neighborhoods where I scored drugs.
Well, for me, it's the streets. I have grown so accustomed to the streets and the lifestyle on the streets since a younger age, and I always thinking that I'm missing out something when I'm not out there.
We know that a very potent external trigger is a certain freeway exit, a certain part of town, because you went there so many times to get the drug and use the drug. And now in recovery, sometimes you drive by and it feels like the car wants to drive off by itself. or you want to get off at that bus stop. You may not even have a reason to be there, but